Hello, Big Tube. Hello, friends. Welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth. And today is Tuesday. It is April 28th, I believe. We've got a couple of days left in the month of April. And we just finished up the Amish in April Readathon. It officially went from the 19th through the 26th, but on the 19th, I was busy finishing up 3 non-Amish books. And I still had one that I wanted to finish, and I finished it up during the week. And then, because I got started a day late, I went an extra day. So I didn't finish up my Amish books until yesterday, but I read a total of 12 if you count the audiobooks, which I do. And I read 2 other books, or finished 2 other books that were not Amish books. So for that 8-day period, I finished a total of 14 books, which I think is kind of a ridiculous number for a 1 week period, but again, most of them were on audio. I did get a lot of housework done while I was listening to those books, so I'm really excited about it. And so let me just tell you about what all I have been reading. So the book I finished that I was reading already when the week started is a book that I was buddy reading with my sister. It's the first in a trilogy, the Candlewood trilogy by Delia Parr. This is called A Hearth in Candlewood. It's a Christian book. It's historical, and I absolutely loved it. It's about a inn owner, and I just thoroughly loved it. Can't wait to read the rest of them, but I'm going to have to wait because in May I like to read middle grade books. Even though it hasn't been officially announced, I don't know if there's going to be an official middle grade May this year, but I'm still going to read middle grade books. But anyway, I finished this one about middle of the week, but let's get to the Amish books that I read. So our theme was to stick with something, and for the most part, I stuck with the Audible Escape package. I had several on my wish list that I wanted to finish, but one of the series that I really wanted to read, only the second and third books were on Audible Escape. So I basically started and ended the readathon with Hoopla. I started with a book I do have a physical copy of, so I'll show you. Let's see here if I can find it. The Promise of Palm Grove by Shelley, Shepard, Gray. This is the first book in the Amish Brides of Pinecraft series. There's 4 full-length novellas or novels, and then 1 novella. I found it on ebook on Hoopla, so I read it as well. And this is there's one overarching storyline about an inn owner. She owns the Orange Blossom Inn in Pinecraft. Now, Pinecraft is a real place, but a lot of the locations that are mentioned in the book are fictitious. Like, I believe the Orange Blossom Inn is probably a fictitious place, and some other things that are mentioned, I'm not sure. I do live in Florida, and I've been to Sarasota, but I've never been to Pinecraft. I would love to go. It makes it sound like there are some touristy places, where people can come and visit and, buy some souvenirs and eat at a restaurant and things like that. So if I'm ever over that way again, I definitely want to do that. So then within each book, there was a different storyline about a different couple. So in this first book, we meet our inn owner who has come to Pinecraft. I think she was originally from Ohio. She had been engaged and was basically jilted by her fiance, who then got married to her best friend. So she comes to Florida to make a new start. She lives with her aunt. Her aunt, she doesn't even really realize, her aunt runs the Orange Blossom Inn, but she doesn't even realize, I guess, through it all, that her aunt doesn't actually own the inn. So when her aunt dies, she continues to run the inn, and then later on, at some point in the story, the actual owner of the inn has died and left it to someone else. So that person shows up, and there's a whole, conflict and resolution with that along the way. But that's a really interesting part of the series. So anyway, in this first story, then our other storyline that is contained within this book is about a group of young women who come to Florida on vacation, and they meet a few young men who live locally, and a romance ensues between one of the couples, and then one of the other couples, their storyline is played out in the novella that that I read. That's book 2.5. It's called A Wish on Gardenia Street. So I'm not going to tell you if a romance actually happens there, but it's a cute story. Also, the wedding of the couple in the first book happens in that novella, so it should definitely go in order. Well, it could be read second. You wouldn't have to wait and read it after the second book, but you could. I like to read things in order. Now, the second book was my favorite. It was called The Promise, no, that's The Promise of Palm Grove. I'll get my stories mixed up. It was called, I'll get it here in a second, The Proposal at Siesta Key. And this is my favorite. It was about a young woman who lived there in Florida. Something tragic had happened in her family, and because of that, her parents were very protective of her. And she kind of needed to get out and do something and be independent, so she gets a job at the Orange Blossom Inn. Then a young man who is part of a traveling evangelism family. They do, Bob is walking through. They travel around. They're kind of famous in their circles, in the Mennonite Amish circles. He had suffered a tragedy, and so he gives a testimony about that as a part of their program. And the rest of his family sing and give testimonies and preach and things like that. So anyway, he... because of his injury, he is needing to have some surgery. So he ends up staying at the Orange Blossom Inn before and after his surgery. So this young woman that we first met, she is, one of her jobs there at the Orange Blossom Inn is to see to his needs. And so there may be a romance there. So that's the second book. And then there was the novella, which I really enjoyed. And then the third book is my favorite cover. It's called A Wedding at the Orange Blossom Inn. And the reason I like it is because the girl there is holding an orange. And I just, it's such a simple thing, but it really just adds a lot to that cover. And there's another romance in this book. I can't even think now what the romance was, but more of the people that we've met. And then in the fourth book, which is called, let me find it here. I have to keep going back and forth between Hoopla and Audible Escape. The fourth one is A Christmas Bride in Pinecraft. And it was good too. It was about a couple that we've already met earlier in the series, and they eventually start a romance and get married. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that series. This was the first series that I had ever read, first books I'd ever read by Shelley Shepard Gray, and I definitely am interested in reading more. I've got at least one or two other books by her on my shelf from a different series, so I did enjoy her books. And then once I read that first one, then I went over to Audible Escape to start on the books there, and I picked up with a series that I had started last year. Last year I read the first book in the Amish heirloom series called The Forgotten Recipe. It was okay, but it didn't blow me away. The second book I enjoyed much more. I don't have a physical copy of it, but it's called The Courtship Basket. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of it. It was about a young woman who is the sister of the young woman in the first book. In fact, the first three of this series of 4 books, each book is about a different daughter in this family. And the overarching story is that for whatever reason, each one of these daughters is looking for something, and they go in search of whatever they're looking for in their mother's hope chest, which I guess she keeps in the attic. So here's the cover of the second one, The Courtship Basket. And when the mother discovers that they've been in her hope chest, she's very secretive about what's in there, and she, I think, reminds them, next time you need something, just come to me, that kind of thing. And she starts to keep it locked because she's obviously hiding something. So the third book is about her third daughter, and it's called The Cherished Quilt. And I can't even remember the storyline in that one, but the fourth book then, The Beloved Hope Chest, this is the mother's story. And at the beginning of the book, she gathers her daughters together and she says, okay, let me explain to you why I've been so secretive about my hope chest. It's time that you all know what had happened in my past and all of that. So this one kind of goes back in time a little bit to the mother's young life and what happened in her early young adulthood and everything. So I won't go into all that, but it was a good story. This is probably my second favorite book of the series. Now, that being said, the series overall, I didn't care for as much as the Shelley Shepard Gray series, and I didn't like either series better than the Beverly Lewis books that I've read. Now, I did a whole video about Beverly Lewis and the books I've read by her and what I know about her, so I want to encourage you to watch that video if you haven't already. But I think the difference is that Beverly Lewis, well, there's two things. She writes from a Christian perspective, and most all of these books could be considered inspirational, and I suspect that most of the authors are probably Christian, but Beverly Lewis does, I think, a really good job of getting including the Christian message in the books, but not being heavy-handed about it. I think she does a really good job of that. The other thing she does, which I can see now that I've read a lot of, several different authors, she does not throw in nearly as many Amish words. And I think it's because somewhere along the line, like Beverly Lewis and Wanda Brunstetter were kind of on the forefront of the Amish fiction. And I can't even remember now what Wanda Brunstetter's style is. I've only read 4 of her books, and 3 of them were from the same series. But definitely between Beverly Lewis and some of the newer Amish fiction authors, here's a big difference. The newer authors put in and include a lot more Amish or German words than Beverly Lewis, to the point where I think it gets distracting. And I did say something about that when I did my Goodreads review of The English Daughter by Cindy Woodsmall and Erin Woodsmall. Now, I really enjoyed this book. This is the main book that I read in print. This was sent to me by Waterbrook Multnomah. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I knew exactly how it was going to end by chapter 2. But this book was such a page turner. I enjoyed the process of reading it. I enjoyed the story. I didn't know all the details, how they were going to happen. What I did know, though, as soon as this big controversial thing happened, I thought, oh, but then she's going to find out this, and then it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. Yeah. And it was. So that there was no mystery there, even though it took a while to actually get to that. But it was okay, because the process was really good. But the only problem I had with this book is that every single time there was an Amish word or phrase, the author had to explain to me what it meant. And I could tell. The author didn't need to explain that to me. Give me some credit. And I think most people would be the exact same way. And if you're not sure, there's a 2-page glossary in the back. If you read a phrase and you really can't tell what it means, it's all back here. So that alone would have been more than sufficient. So the Amish words and the German words, it's fine to an extent, but you don't need to throw in so many that it's distracting to the story. And some of the words, honestly, this is going to sound really immature, but some of the words sound so silly that you just like, how can the narrator read this with a straight face? I know, it's terrible for me to say that. It's terrible. It sounds really immature. But honestly, some of them just, I hear it and I just want to laugh. And I'm sorry. Please forgive me if that's bad. But I have my moments. I know. Sorry. Anyway, let's move on. So that's just really, it's just distracting. I think some of the newer Amish authors throw in too many Amish words. So anyway, that's the majority, I guess, of what I read or finished. The other non-Amish book I read was by Beverly Lewis. I wanted to explore some of her children's fiction, which she wrote children's fiction even before she started writing Amish fiction, and I read Frog Power. This is book 5 in the Cul-de-sac Kids series, and I did check out one other one from the library, but we have a couple libraries in our county that are doing curbside, so that was good, and I'm going to read that during the month of May because of middle grade May and all that. So I think that's everything. The other Beverly Lewis book that I read or listened to was The Fiddler. And I also listened to the second book in that series, which is The Bridesmaid. So I'll show you a picture of that real quick. And then there was one other book I did listen to, a Wanda Brunstetter book, which I'll show you in just a second. So anyway, there's a copy of The Bridesmaid, book 2 in the Home to Hickory Hollow series. It's a 5-book series, and I listened to the first 2. Then I did listen to The Storekeeper's Daughter by Wanda Brunstetter, and I enjoyed this a lot. There are more in this series. In fact, the next one is called The Quilter's Daughter, and I think I have seen that book around at book sales, and I didn't pick it up because I saw that it was book 2 in a series, and I didn't realize I had book 1 on my shelf already. So if I see that one again, I'm going to pick it up and definitely read it. So this was very good. It is exactly what the title says. It's about a daughter who is the daughter of a storekeeper. Their mother passes away, and there are maybe 8 kids, and she's the oldest. So the father is grieving too much to even think about marrying again, even though it's been now, I guess, a couple of years or more. And there's a young man who would like to court her, but the father absolutely refuses because he's kind of selfish. He wants her to stay and raise the kids, and he doesn't want to lose her, and he doesn't want to get married again. So she's kind of stuck, and it's that story. So I thought it was very good. So anyway, that's it. That's what I read for the Amish in April Readathon, and that's what I read this past week. I have started, let me see how much time I have left. I got about a minute and a half to tell you what I've already started reading since, well, I didn't even bring it in here. Since last night, I picked up, I've got a few non-Amish books that I want to try to finish before, or read before the end of the month, which is Friday, I guess. Yeah, I've got till Friday. And so I picked up The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. So I'm doing a 180 from what I've been reading, and I'm loving it. It's so good. I finished, I got to the halfway point last night, and then instead of picking up another book that I wanted to read in print, I picked up the print copy of Testaments, which we have checked out from the library, and I have been rereading it in print. So it's that good. And I thought maybe I would need to read Handmaid's Tale again, but I remembered enough of it to, to get what's going on. So that I'm really enjoying. I'm also, when I ever can put down Testaments, I want to read the last or most current coffeehouse book. I've got it here in print. It's Brood Awakening by Cleo Coyle. And then on audio, I want to listen to the second Longmire book, Death Without Company. My husband had that checked out from the library. And then for my Audible Escape I'm running out of time. Anyway, here they are. It's a Georgette Heyer book, and Georgette Hare, sorry, and Jane Austen. What is this one? Northanger Abbey. So those I'm going to listen to. Anyway, I'm running out of time. Before my tape cuts off, or before my phone cuts off, let me just say, read a good book. God bless you, and have a great day. I did that backwards, but oh well. Have a great day.